You ever think about things that are small? How about the teeny tiniest animals on Earth? What's up, smarty people? It's KeysDAN, RadioWhat.com, DJLittleRock.com. KeysDAN Show. The size gap between the biggest and smallest creatures in the animal kingdom can boggle the mind. On one end, you have gigantic organisms such as the blue whale, some of which have been recorded at more than 100 feet long. But on the other side of the spectrum, you have certain species that are so infinitesimal that they can comfortably fit on the tip of a human finger. Here's a look at some of the world's tiniest creatures, from minute mammals to fun-sized fish. Of course, there are also microscopic bacteria to consider, but those fall under a separate classification outside of the animal kingdom. Here's some examples from each of the 6 basic groups of animals: mammals, birds, fish, reptiles, amphibians, and invertebrates, each of which contains living beings whose sheer diminutive size may be hard to fathom. Here's one under the mammal category: bumblebee bat. The world's smallest mammal, as noted by Guinness World Records, is the Teeny-Tiniest thonglongyai, commonly known as the bumblebee bat due to its size. This teeny animal is also known as Kitty's hog-nosed bat, a name that pays homage to its snout-like nose and the fact that it was discovered in 1974 by zoologist Kitty Thongyongja. The body of the average bumblebee bat measures a mere 1.14 inches to 1.29 inches long, though it has a relatively long wingspan by comparison, between 5.1 and 5.7 inches. The bat weighs between 0.05 ounces and 0.07 ounces, which is less than the weight of a dime and comparable to 2 grains of rice. This also means bumblebee bats are 80 million times lighter than the largest mammal, the blue whale. The creature is native to caves along Thailand's Kwai Nwai River as well as to Myanmar. Given their small stature, bumblebee bats rely on a diet of even tinier creatures such as itty-bitty spiders and moths. There's an argument to be made that the tiniest mammal is actually the Etruscan shrew, Suncus etruscus, which Guinness considers the smallest mammal in terms of total mass, while the bumblebee bat is the smallest by body length. These creatures are native to parts of the Mediterranean and South Asia and are slightly longer than bumblebee bats, measuring an average of 1.4 to 2 inches, while the smallest bumblebee bat may weigh 0.599 ounces. However, some Etruscan shrews have been measured at 0.0529 ounces, a relatively substantial difference, even if on a tiny scale. Now let's talk about birds. Bee hummingbird. The tiniest bird in the world is yet another creature with an Asian nickname, the bee hummingbird, also known by its scientific name, Meliphaga helenae. This airborne critter is native to Cuba and the nearby Isla de Juventud, Isle of Youth. Bee hummingbirds measure around 2.24 inches long, and more than half of that length is composed of the bird's bill and tail. Females are slightly larger than males, though both are infinitesimally small at an average weight of just 0.056 ounces, according to the Audubon Society. These petite birds are roughly half the weight of a standard hummingbird. Despite their small size, bee hummingbirds work hard and fast, with wings that beat 80 times every second. That number increases to 200 times per second during courtship flights, which are performed to attract mates. You can tell a male bee hummingbird from its bright red throat, whereas females have more of a bluish green and gray coloring. If you ever happen to be bird watching in Cuba, keep an eye out for bee hummingbirds in rainforests, mountain valleys, and rural gardens. Essentially, anywhere there's nectar for them to feed on. And now the fishies, spiny-head sea devil. It may not be a trophy fish, but the spiny-head sea devil, Photocorinus spinoceps, holds the Guinness record for the world's smallest fish. A relative of the angelfish, this compact creature has an average length of just 0.24 inches, while the female is substantially larger at 1.8 inches, according to research conducted by Professor Theodore W. Peach of the University of Washington. Peach collected samples from the Philippine Sea, where the creatures live at a depth of around 4,675 feet. That said, there's some debate over how fish should be measured, and some newly discovered species have been deemed worthy competitors for the title of smallest fish. Pedocyprus progenica, or the dwarf goby. Mature female dwarf gobies measure just 0.31 inches long and can be found in the swampy forest of the Sumatra in Indonesia. In the battle for smallest fish, Australian scientists William Watson and A.J. Walker posit another theory, claiming the world's smallest fish may be the stout floater, Cnidaria brevipinguis. In studying these fish, which are native to the Great Barrier Reef, Watson and Walker found the females measure around 0.27 inches long and males around 0.25 inches long. But the researchers also believe we should take weight into account when determining the tiniest fish. They suggest that stout floaters are more slender than the spiny-head sea devil and the dwarf goby, and are therefore likely to weigh less than both species, though they lack conclusive evidence. How about the little reptiles? Nano chameleon. Of the roughly 11,500 known species of reptile, a number that continues to climb, the tiniest one of the bunch resides on the African island nation of Madagascar. This small reptile is a dwarf chameleon known by the scientific name Brookesia nana, though it is also referred to as the nano chameleon. The discovery of this tiny creature was made in 2021 by a team of German researchers who successfully collected 2 specimens, one male and one female. The team found the male to be much smaller, clocking it in at a record-setting 0.53 inches from snout to vent, plus another 0.33 inches if you include its tail. However, as noted by Guinness, reptiles are typically measured sans tail, as tail lengths can vary depending upon injury and other external factors. As this record was only confirmed in 2021, there may very well be other reptiles we've yet to discover that are even smaller. For now, the nano chameleon reigns supreme, having taken the record from the 0.62-inch Jaragua dwarf gecko of the Caribbean. Unlike a stereotypical chameleon, Brookesia nana is incapable of changing color and always appears to be a shade of brown. In the amphibian category, the Brazilian flea toad. The name Brachycephalus pulex may sound like a towering dinosaur, but it's actually a scientific name for the world's smallest amphibian, the Brazilian flea toad. These little hoppers are native to the Sierra Bonita mountain range along the Atlantic coast of Brazil and were first discovered in 2009. Ironically, the Brazilian flea toad isn't a toad at all, but rather a frog. They were initially believed to be toads, which accounts for the misnomer. It wasn't until 2024 that scientists confirmed the record-setting size of these creatures, stripping the superlative from another frog, Pedophrine amensis of Papua New Guinea. Male Brazilian flea toads average 0.27 inches in length, though the smallest known example measured just 0.25 inches, smaller than a green pea or a housefly. Females are a bit larger, measuring 0.32 inches. And finally, the invertebrate, Myxozoa. While the other 5 main animal groups are made up of vertebrates, invertebrates are frequently much smaller owing to their lack of a skeleton. And it doesn't get any tinier than myxozoans, which are the smallest animals of any kind. Myxozoans are a class of animal considered to be obligate parasites, meaning they can't survive without a host from which to get nutrients. Tens of thousands of these species are estimated to exist, and they're often found in marine or freshwater environments. Of the thousands of myxozoan species that have been studied, Myxobolus shekel may be the smallest. Zoological professor Nicola Di Girolamo says this species grows to be no more than 8.5 micrometers, which is equivalent to 0.0003 inches. But most other species of myxozoa aren't much bigger, generally reaching lengths between 10 and 20 micrometers, 0.00039 to 0.00078 inches. Well, how about that? Itty bitty, tiny little creatures. You ever seen any of these little creatures in person? Well, be on the lookout if you're in any of these places. The teeniest, tiniest animals on Earth. Ain't they cute? Aren't they cute? This has been the KeysDAN Show. Stick around for more. It's KeysDAN, RadioWhat.com, DJLittleRock.com. Peace. I'm out of here.